New Achievement, a Dungeon Crawler Carl book club podcast.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Ellie. And in this podcast, we are reading, researching, and recapping each book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. This is a spoiler light podcast, so obviously heavy spoilers for the book we're on, but we'll try not to spoil any future events in the series so you can crawl along with us. Today, we're covering part 2 of book 2, Carl's Doomsday Scenario, chapters 13 through the end. So, Jess, will you catch us up on how we got to where we are?
Previously on New Achievement. Alien fish have destroyed Earth to build the world dungeon. Our heroes, Carl and Donut, have to fight for their lives with the universe watching. They survive 2 levels by the skin of many goblin babies. That was just the warm-up. They parked in the Jurassic and adopted a velociraptor, Mongo. Happy with perfection, Princess Donut chose to remain a cat and use her child-acting chops. Carl looks the same, but his DNA is full-on primal, and anarchy is the name of his game. Carl broke his finger to break the hold of an elite NPC. She dragged him to a circus starring tattoos, war, and worms, while Mongo took spikes to protect the princess. Accidentally alerted by moist media manager Zev, Carl exterminated his parasites and found his family injured but alive. And how
Worms. Did we have to mention the worms?
I went pretty light on the worms considering how influential the worms were in the last section.
So many worms.
Do you want to talk about what happened in the section we just read?
This time on New Achievement. Through loot and lewd leering, the dungeon starts to settle on the crawler's looks as Carl's pantslessness has him locked in way before October. Carl buys some bombs, Donut gets wrecked and riles up some raging Rottweilers. Our trio gets trolled with a fan box, but Carl takes the high-lie road, and both he and his bomb's range rises above it all. A riled-up reaction to Carl's rousing rally to revolution on Ripper's Roundtable removes a resplendent reproduction of a remarkable artist instead of our rambunctious rebel-rousers. Our trio becomes a quartet as lost daughter of Brynhild, Katya, joins the party. As women who fell from grace fall from the sky, we meet the frothing city elves who accuse Donut of being the Antichrist and resist her charms with fervent fury. Mongo is still disarmingly cute, as a fight with the city guards leaves Carl a wanted man. He mitigates his malfeasance by murking the magistrate, marauding her multicolored menagerie of mock beanie babies, and marching through a magic machine meant for maniacal mastery over the majority of the floor's members. The return of Remax the Grand is relegated to a rambling recital of a repulsive racket to restore a once resplendent regency rather than relating to reality. The soul gem explodes, Carl pockets the heart of the magical explosion, but Remax is set to blow, so everyone needs to book it butt naked to the stairwell, where Katya hits a detonator and everyone gets screwed out of a celestial box. Except for that one fucking guy. All right, a little bit more happened in that section than I thought, but
this was a short book,
guy.
But a lot happened. A lot happened in this book, and this section was packed.
Yeah. So what's our crawler count at?
So as of chapter 2, the kill lady let us know that we had over 700,000 remaining. But in chapter 14, in this section, we find out we are down to 6,049,933. Carl specifically mentions that there were tens of thousands of people dead since he last looked, but at the same time, the number slowed profoundly. The people who've made it this far mostly know what they're doing now.
So we've got a slower drop-off of crawlers, since we know that the people who were going to get wiped out in the tutorial levels have been wiped out?
In theory. So what locations were important in this section?
Well, we finally got to go into the Desperado Club. And the club is always full, but the vast majority of the people inside it are apparently bots, where they're not even NPCs, they're just like super simple AI puppets. Mordecai says that if anybody is young, buff, or beautiful half-naked creatures, you can dance with them, you can even bang them if you have the gold, but they can't hold more than a rudimentary conversation, and they don't exist outside the club. Which sounds like literally everyone I've ever actually met in a club. Like, you will never see this person anywhere but here. You barely have anything to talk about. If you want to bang, like, all right, fine, but Ugh.
Didn't we sort of meet in a club?
We met in a microbrewery.
There was a comedy
That
show. So it was like a
was
comedy
for
club.
some reason putting on. It was in no way a comedy club. Like there wasn't even a stage. We stood in front of the front door and hoped that nobody came in.
Oh, that's right. Good. Good, good, good.
That's what you do for a grand opening somewhere. Make everyone sit in silence and watch four people talk. There you go. That's exciting.
Worked out well for us.
Fair. The Desperado Club also has like a shopping area where you get certain kinds of goods you can't really get elsewhere. And one of those places is Hobgobs and Boomsticks, which is clearly a Bedknobs and Broomsticks reference.
I
It's
totally
the
missed that.
Hobgoblin.
That was a good pickup. It's a great pickup. I don't know how I missed that, considering Bedknobs and Broomsticks is one of my favorite movies. Good job.
Well, maybe you're too close to it.
Maybe.
But I do love that the lady running it is super gross, clearly kind of insane, and also has very good hearing. So Mordecai's like, you two need to make good impressions on this woman because you'll be seeing a lot of her. And then they just immediately start talking shit about her. Like, I can hear you.
Well, it's a good thing he didn't pick Hobgoblin as his race earlier because I knew about the ugliness. They talked about that, but they didn't talk about the fact that these creatures also like reek and are snotty and slime. Just gross. No wonder that audiences don't like them. They sound miserable.
Well, wasn't his like hobgoblin pus is an explosive thing? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just imagining like pus like Baron Harkonnen from the 1984 Dune. Just that level of gross and weird.
yuck.
Like,
I keep picturing,
uh,
in the Next Generation episode where is it what Measure of a Man, where they put where there's the trial
mhm.
and is that the one where no, it's a different one. It's not that one. I lied. It's the one where they have the woman who like appears on board and she turns into like as they think she's like Kalas and then she ends up being able to turn her into like 10 different things and one of them is like the gross slimy like hobgoblin monster thing.
Oh, you're thinking of Devil's Due?
Devil's Do, is that the one? Yeah.
Devil's Due is the one where they go to this planet and supposedly like Satan has come back because a few centuries ago they like did a bunch of reforms and saved their planet, but like the folk tale version of it for some reason was like we made a
Yeah.
literal deal with the devil. And then
That's
this
right.
lady
That's what
shows
it
up and
is.
is like, "That's me. I'm the devil." And yeah, one
Mm-hmm.
of her forms is
Kay,
Feklar.
yeah, it's Feklar. And then,
Kalis is Jesus. Feklar is the
but
devil.
didn't she also like? I thought she showed up as Kalis too, like in her boom, 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 boom. But Feklar, okay.
No,
I might be
Kalis is a
conflating
dude and he's short. He shows up
56
later.
different episodes. Yeah, I thought, well, whatever. Point is, we can cut all that. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah, no, she does show up as she turns into Feklar briefly. I think they
blah,
do like
blah.
the traditional thing of like real reference, alien reference,
Mm-hmm.
like composers like Mozart or Beethoven of Versify of Rigel 5. Like, but yeah, no. Measure of the Man is the one where Data gets put on trial to determine whether or not he's a real person.
Yep. Yep. I conflated them in my head.
How dare you? All right, then our last interesting place was the borrowed production trailer for Ripper Wonton's show. Just I love that Ripper Wonton is like an Ewok, like an absolutely adorable fuzzy little alien, but he's named Ripper Wonton. Like he's a ripper. He's gonna get you if you're a wonton.
I just
He's a
kept
little
thinking,
dumpling.
because that whole show is supposed to be like Crossfire. You have Tucker, just like Tucker Carlson. And I kept thinking Ripper Wonton was maybe something. Is it like a play of like Wolf Blitzer or something? There's something,
Maybe.
or is it just a funny name? But yeah, but
It's
he's
gotta be a
adorable. You
reference.
just want to hug him.
So let's move on to important characters. Jess, who do we meet? Ooh, we meet a lot of
Lots of
people.
folks. We meet a
Ooh.
lot of folks. So we've already mentioned Katya Grimm as part of Hecla's Broomhild's daughters. And when they are on Ripper Wonton's show, they appear with Hecla, who requested that Katya They help Katya level, and Donut is enamored with Hecla and automatically says yes. I think Carl is a little bit more suspect of Hecla and would have preferred maybe that she didn't jump to that yes, but that's what is done. When we meet Katya, she is a doppelganger, which means that she has to sculpt herself and sculpt her face and hair and everything. She can't just be and look like a human. She actually has to manually do it. And it turns out that it doesn't go so well for her. She is not great at it.
Yeah. So we get the fun little joke of like, she used to be an art teacher, but she cannot sculpt at all. So those who can't do teach. Yeah, she said she looks like a Juan Gris painting. I don't even remember how she said it in the audiobook,
Grease.
but
Grease
Grease.
in the audiobook. Yeah.
Oh, apparently he's a Spanish Cubist painter. So, wow, she looks bad.
Yeah. Not good. Not good at all. And she isn't in this book a ton, but when she is, she does seem to be pretty timid. Her stats aren't great. It looks like she can be kind of a good bulldozer, and that's pretty much it. So it doesn't look like at this point she's going to be a great addition to the team. We also met Manasa, who we have already mentioned. She is the singer who is assassinated mistakenly after switching trailers with Carl and Donut. She looks like a cobra because she's a naga, and I guess that's a lot like the D&D version. Big snakes with shoulders, arms, and a torso that is humanoid. And Manasa in Hinduism refers to a goddess revered as the goddess of snakes and fertility, known for protecting and promoting well being, according to Wikipedia. And unfortunately, she is a singer who has sung her last as she was blown out of the water accidentally.
Yeah. And our culture tends to think of snakes as like being affiliated with death and danger, but in a lot of cultures, particularly more Eastern cultures, the fact that snakes shed their skin and regrow it is kind of linked with like immortality and rebirth. So like having a snake aligned with like fertility and life, like it makes sense in that context. But
Which is
we're
interesting because she's got a Valte worm in her head.
so
She
she's reborn.
actually, yeah, she died. She was reborn as a wormhead, as Princess Donatia calls her. But they were great friends, which puts us to Princess Donatia of the Prison Kingdom. She is a Sacathian, and they're called Sacs. Her kingdom is very small, but it's very important in trade circles. And she is a huge fan of Carl and Donut, so much so that she specifically requests to sit by them as they appear on the Ripper Wonton show.
Yeah. So she's like cephalopoid. She's got a tentacle face. Um, Carl calls her like a human-sized Cthulhu, and it gives me no end of joy that Lovecraftian tropes have been reduced to like memes, where it's like, oh, this grand, unknowable, unconsiderable, forbidden knowledge of blah blah blah. And we're like, yeah, man, we get it. Yeah, like, okay. Extra dimensional aliens who understand things we can't possibly understand. Great. I don't care. I can't possibly understand it. Like, I can't envision 14-dimensional space. My brain just won't do it. I don't care. Oh, but you'll see these amazing things. I've seen lots of amazing things. I've been on the internet since I was like 12. What do you want? None of this is blowing my mind. It's this crazy creature. Dude, I don't care. I don't
And now it's a
care.
passing reference.
And now it's just a passing reference. It's a Cthulhu. Mighty, unknowable elder gods from beyond. All right, cool. So it's like a kind of green person with tentacles on their face. Yeah, like okay, cool. Maybe Lovecraft didn't live through enough once in a lifetime events before he was 25 to just get this level of millennial jaded. I don't know. Moving on.
I haven't read any Lovecraft.
You're not
So
missing much.
We heard about and sort of met King Rust, Prince Stalwart, and Queen Consort Uglu. They are the family of the former Prince Maestro. He's former, first of all, because they removed the prince from his rank, but also because the queen and Prince Maestro are suspected to have been killed in retaliation because it is their family who fired the shot that killed Manassa. Prince Stalwart claimed responsibility for trying to kill Carl and Donut, and that happened right after he called for kind of a rising up of King Rust's people. And so about 2 minutes later, boom, there was Manassa being blown away.
Hmm. Queen Consort Uglu? Like that has to be a play on ugly, right?
It
Like
has to be. It has to be.
I love I love low effort female orcs being like uglyified because they're orcs. Because it's usually just like, oh, she's got a square jaw. Like, okay, so giant green muscle mommy has like some back hair. That's fine. I'm bi. Bring it on. Like, it's like the scene in The Hobbit where it's like, oh, I don't like elf maids. They're too femme. That one's pretty good though. It's like that's not an elf maid. Yeah, that's why I like them. Okay, this is hilarious to you because okay, okay.
We hear a lot about Ferdinand. We finally get a reveal as to his identity. He's Donut's star-crossed love interest, the reason she jumped out of the window. And apparently, rather than Ferdinand, his actual name is Gravy Boat, and he was the cat of one of B and Carl's neighbors who came around whenever Donut was in heat. Donut referred to him, or Donut said that in royalty circles, Gravy Boat slash Ferdinand was known as a moggy. Well, a moggy is a term used in British English to refer to a domestic cat, especially one that is not a purebred or has mixed ancestry. So it's a casual and informal way to refer to a cat. So it's kind of funny because Donut has, in the audiobook, she kind of has this like affectation that I think of as British. And then,
Hmm.
she's talking about royalty, which is, of course, very British. And then this terminology of moggy, which is, again, very British. Where would she get any of this? So I just think that's pretty funny.
Well, it's just the cultured level of her soul shining through, darling.
Yes. Yes. We also hear, and I just lumped these all into one category. We have Mrs. Quill, Featherfall, Burgundy, and Remix the Grand. These are
Hmm.
all characters in what the big bad mystery quest is for the floor. So Carl and Donut, of course, get roped into a quest because there was a crying orc named Gum Gum who was just begging for their help, and Carl and Donut could not resist. Remix is an NPC, but also we find out he's a former crawler. He's a tenor. So somebody who made a deal to get out on the 10th floor.
Yeah, that was horrifying. Um, like you get out in the 10th floor. We keep thinking of getting a contract with the crawl as something like Mordecai-ish, where you're part of the system and kind of behind the scenes. But apparently, no, you can also just wind up as some random schlub. Uh, or you can wind up kidnapped and turned into a hideous undead monster, which is just horrifying to a whole new level. Like,
Yeah.
don't get undead.
Well,
Oh God.
his story was that was, he was attached to Miss Quill as his or her husband, right?
Hmm.
And then Miss Quill died, and so he's kind of left as this bereft minion who has lost this attachment. So that means he has the memories or the knowledge of being married, being a part of this multi-year spell, like, and to have the knowledge of being a crawler it's not like they wipe your memory and then you just go on as an NPC. Like some of these NPCs get, new memories implanted every floor. They've got these new lives. He's kind of got it all, and that just seems horrifying. That's terrible. That'd be a terrible way to live. And he is
Mm-hmm.
definitely very excited to be exiting the dungeon. However, he gets to do it. Whether or not it's in a big explosion doesn't seem to matter much to him.
Exit stage left, pursued by a pantsless man. Well, speaking of pantsless, let's move over to Tarantino Corner, our place for all things podophilia. Chapter 16, when we get Chapter 16, when we meet the hobgoblin bomb lady. Oh, sweetie, Donut said. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let's start over. Yeah, okay, Pustule said. We wouldn't want anyone getting off on any feet. Donut gave me a sidelong glance. Well, it might be a little late for that. Feet.
Not a lot of feet. There's a ton of stuff in this section, but not a lot of feet in this section. The only thing else that I can think of that had to do with feet is he he kicked someone in the balls and made their testicles
Mhm.
explode. And Donut said, oh, the computer like that or the AI like that or something. But that's really it. So of all the gross stuff that happened in this section, feet kind of got off easily in this one. Oh, wrong choice of words. Wrong choice. Sorry. I bet he got off easily. Probably not the guy who, had the exploding testicles. He probably didn't get off so easily. Maybe that's his thing, though.
Yeah, I've met a couple people who have a
Yeah.
whole thing about that.
Yeah. Anyway,
This dude whose whole stage act was just grabbing random women from the audience to kick them in the nuts on stage. Because reasons.
got to make a living somehow.
Let's move on to our favorites. Jess, what was your favorite achievement?
In Chapter 13, new achievement 1 quadrillion. You are one of the first 10 crawlers to have achieved 1 quadrillion views. That means one of two things. You're either one of the best crawlers in the game, or you're such a hot mess, people can't wait to see you fail. Reward, you have received a gold fan box. I love that because that just seems just so much like life right now, like applicable to life is look,
Hmm.
anything that happens is either great or you're a fucking mess. Doesn't matter which, really. And that's such a reality TV thing too. Like, you've got
Mm-hmm.
the Kardashians who are equal parts like rich and trashy. And then you've got some of these other, shows that are like, I don't know, Temptation Island and these other things where you're essentially just watching garbage TV, garbage humans on garbage TV because you want to turn your brain off. And the point is, it doesn't really matter why you're watching. It could be either. So I think it's one of those kind of throwaway moments that when you really think about it, actually says a whole lot about the society they're in right now, our society. So I thought it was kind of a perfect encapsulation of what I've come to expect from Matt Zinnemann.
I went with something also kind of trashy. It was chapter 22, new achievement, cockblock. You have assassinated an NPC whose existence was required to complete another crawler's quest. Who was that other crawler? What was the quest? Who fucking cares? You get the reward they were promised. Warning, you may only receive this award once. The next time you do it, we tell them who you are, and they get a new quest to kill you. Nobody likes cockblocks. Reward, you've received a silver quest box. So I think that's a really good encapsulation of the thing we were talking about in the last episode of like now we're past the tutorial. Now we're getting into more complicated stuff and meta, where like not only are there quests, but this is a multiplayer game and there's no respawns. So if you fuck up somebody else's quest, there's going to be consequences. The first consequence is funny. After that, it becomes a problem. So don't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting as much as this is like a game or has all these game elements. When you're playing, a video game, typically it's not going to matter if player two also does the thing, that you were going to do. You can still play the level. Is that a thing in MMOs? I was wondering about that. Like if you play WoW or something, does it happen that it can't happen very much when you have these worldwide things where there's only one of something for everybody? That really can't happen. So this is a key difference in this universe compared to
Uh-huh.
some of the things that it's referencing.
Yeah, so it's because there's no respawns. So, um, say you and somebody else both have a quest that involves an NPC that's like, the local lion is terrorizing the things, and one of you has
Mm-hmm.
to go kill it, and then the other one has to go take the pin out of its paw that's causing it to be a terror. Um, if either one of you kills it, it's going to respawn in like 5 minutes usually. So it's
Oh,
slightly
that's what you mean. Okay.
annoying that someone screwed up your quest, but it's not going to keep you from being able to complete the quest because that's ridiculous and not a great way to run a game that has millions of people playing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not millions of people on the same server, but the point remains, you just can't have something that exclusive and have the game run correctly.
Mm-hmm. It's odd to think of these crawlers, when we think of how focused the AI seems to be on Carl and Donut, especially now. Mordecai says, hey, as you've got your image kind of built, you're going to be getting items and things that reflect that character, and the system doesn't want you to change a whole heck of a lot. And then they've got Zev and and the interviews. So it's really easy, I think, to think of Carl and Donut kind of having this adventure in isolation. We know there's these other crawlers out and about, but they haven't really crossed paths in this way. And then you think that this other crawler, Batista, he's got the AI's eye on him potentially as much as it is on Carl and Donut. We don't know. Maybe he has a media manager, and he's got the stories and things focused on him. So it's sort of odd to think that all of these things are happening simultaneously and potentially competing. We find out there's this top 10 list, and Carl and Donut are not number one and number two. So, as much attention as they're getting, that's happening even in greater amounts to other crawlers. So how do these storylines, how do they compete? How will they come together? Because at some point there's got to be a prioritization of some kind, or somebody's going to come out victorious. But it's odd to think of this whole machine being around other crawlers also. Like somewhere there's a dungeon crawler Bautista series.
I hope he does before Disney bought it, there was just shit tons of Star Wars books, and there were a couple of them like Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina or Tales of the Bounty Hunters, where it was just little short stories about background characters that you saw. Um, like we don't need those bounty hunters scum in Empire Strikes Back. There's a dude standing there with his head wrapped up in a bunch of bandages. Like, what's the deal with that? Why does he have a bunch of bandages on his head in space? And so it's a little story about that. And it's like, oh, because he got his head lit on fire a little while ago. Okay.
Yeah, there
No.
is definitely potential for so much. I mean, you could go the Zev and Donut route and have there be a ton of fan fiction, or the number
Mhm.
of like companion series that could happen, or just novellas or one offs or like book 7.5s. There's a ton here. So, and I will be first in line to read it all for sure. So, I mean, I'm sure Matt
Absolutely.
Dinniman doesn't need like a life. He can just write books for all these amazing characters in the dungeon and their stories.
Well, I mean, that and hitting the con scene is just your kind of, retirement fund. Well, let's move on to our favorite quotes. Jess, what was your favorite quote?
Well, my favorite quote you took. So
Oh.
that is what should instill me to get to the script faster, is the fact that I can get my favorite quote in. But my second favorite quote is In chapter 14, I'm not sure where you're from, but the cultured amongst us no longer use corpses as icebreakers. And that is, of course, Princess Donut as she encounters Gum Gum with a stack of dead hookers.
Hmm? Yeah, and then shortly thereafter, Carl and Donut actually use a corpse as an icebreaker to get past Miss Quill's icy disposition.
Ooh,
Like,
oh, that's
right? I was proud of that one.
so good. I love that scene. They just whip out this corpse and throw it on the executive assistant's desk, and the guards don't do anything, and it's just leaking fluid. We don't know
What is
what.
that? I don't know.
It's not blood. It's not blood. You better get a paper towel though. Those beanie, they suck up a lot of moisture. Oh,
I love also the unrelated, but I love the fact that the Beanie Babies are actually worth something.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the one he takes and the case are the most expensive things that he has above
The
like a pulse pistol.
Chimeras, is that what he got?
Yeah,
Something
that
like
sounds
that.
right.
Yeah,
Chimera's
yeah,
dude on
yeah.
a horse.
Oh my goodness. And it's funny because they could have like reclamated Beanie Babies. They took the Earth. There are
Hmm.
actual Beanie Babies in existence. We saw
Were
several of
Beanie
them at
Babies
the
another were Beanie Babies another syndicate plant into our culture? Is that why that happened?
maybe they just relabeled them. We saw a lot of Beanie Babies at the 90s exhibit at the museum the other day. And all I could think of was, them in line on the shelf in boxes in this office in Miss Quill's little cubicle. That's probably her life savings in Beanie
It,
Babies.
anytime Beanie Babies comes up, the image that always jumps to my mind is a couple in divorce court
Mm-hmm.
with the Beanie Babies piled on the floor, and they're both kneeling on the floor and sorting them into who gets which one. Because we really thought that they were going to be an investment, you guys. Not we, not we. We were children and supposed to be stupid. But the adults really seriously thought this was going to be a thing.
Yeah. It took me probably, I don't know how, like maybe the fifth read through or listen through of this section, but I did not catch until just this last time that when Carl put up the shelf, he planted explosives in the
Hmm.
shelf. I caught him saying, of course, like, "You're welcome for fixing your shelf," but I just somehow glazed over the fact that he had planted explosives, and that's how they were able to explode the office behind the magical locked door of
Hmm.
the building. So they had tried to get to the magistrate again as part of their quest because for a while he seemed like the big bad, and they were stopped by the impenetrable force that was Mrs. Quill,
Yeah.
who's out looking
Ms.
for paper
Quill,
towels. Ms. Quill,
Ms. Quill.
who needs a paper
Um,
towel because there's corpse goo.
yeah, that's delightfully D&D slash Baldur's Gate kind of stuff. Like, oh no, the lock on the chest is too complicated for me to pick. What's the chest made of? Wood. Okay, I have a giant axe. I'm just gonna chop a hole in the chest. Okay. Like, you can't get past the door. What's the wall next to it made out of?
Well, in the book, Miss Quill is described as the gatekeeper, and the note is Cerberus, Heimdall, Anaketos, and Alexiares, Quinn Shubao, all mythical gatekeepers and city protectors. The last one he mentions is Lev Yashin, who's a
Mhm.
soccer goalie. He was considered the best goalkeeper in the sport. He was a Soviet soccer player. And it's like, that's where it's almost like reading Pratchett because again, it's just this throwaway moment. It's a nothing describing Miss Quill, and there's this great joke buried in there that most people are never going to get. They're never going to notice. So much work goes into that little moment, which is why you can read these 5 times, 10 times, and always dig up something new. And the more you learn, the more reference material you have in your head, then the easier it is to go back and have those references to dig out even more jokes. So I loved that little throwaway moment. So good.
It was definitely part of your pitch to me to read these books. Is like they're very Pratchett-y.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, blaspheming, but we'll see. And yeah, no, they are quite Pratchett-y. Um,
Mm-hmm. Which is
they're not
appropriate
as
for us.
crazy dense with the references, but getting there.
They're getting there. I can only imagine what the later books are going to be because they definitely seem to be ramping up for sure based upon the amount of trivia that I had to research and read. But the fact that they're very Pratchettian, I think, is appropriate for us, especially because it's now pretty much 10 years to the day since we met. And our first conversation was about Pratchett.
Very nearly. Oh, and
So,
happy glorious 25th to those of you who celebrate. Uh,
mhm,
may you rise and get yourself a hard-boiled egg.
mhm.
Ooh, that's like an expensive treat now, not just like a.
I'm glad I don't like I'm glad I don't like eggs. And I'm glad that this book doesn't have a food stuff celebration because everything that we've read about so far has been gross. We could take one of the babka prepared meals, perhaps, and those have all been fantastic, but I think it'd be more appropriate to celebrate Dungeon Crawler Carl with like an ice cream cone of worms.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, that's how I think of hard boiled eggs though, so I don't know.
Every time you mention something to do with the worms, I'm just going to read the next section like this. Kill,
Okay,
kill.
what are we moving on to? References and trivia. Yes.
Wait, I didn't get to do my quote.
Oh,
Um, my quote came from chapter 15. Cats don't drink cocktails, I said. Well, cats don't shoot lasers out of their eyes either, but here we are, Carl. Mama needs a night off.
that was my favorite quote too.
Yeah, no, that's just really, really good. That's very donut. Um, and I love that she's just immediately trashed from eating a couple of vodka-soaked maraschino cherries because, of course, she's a cat. She's like this big. It doesn't take a lot to get a cat drunk, apparently.
My favorite part is how she keeps getting angry at the drink. Like, this is disgusting. Drinks more. She starts growling at it. Drinks more. It's like, oh, I've been there. I've been there. And she drinks Dirty Shirley, which I had never heard of a Dirty Shirley before I read these books. Did you?
Nope.
So
Nope.
it's like a Shirley Temple, but with booze.
Mm-hmm. Just a
Yeah.
Shirley Temple with vodka, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge fan of the cherries. I think to me that would taste like cough medicine.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely wouldn't. Especially with the vodka. That's definitely giving cough medicine.
Yeah, so I don't blame her for. Well, Carl just gets a bottle of what bourbon was he drinking?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got her with, and he's just got a bottle. Bourbon is not something I think you order by the bottle typically. Isn't
Yeah,
that
but
normally like a shot or like a
or
rocks glass
like a rocks glass.
to sip?
Yeah, I was never big into bourbon or dark liquors, really. I was always more of a vodka person. There were no signs. Um, yeah, I don't know what you do with bourbon. Just gross.
Gross.
Should put that in the gratuitous violence section.
Just ordering a bottle of bourbon. I mean, I can understand based upon the circumstances they're in. If there's a time or place to get fucked up, this is it. But ugh, I would
Yeah.
pick something better. I would get something. I would just see how much Malibu and pineapple I could possibly drink.
Mm.
Just chug it.
I mean, Mordecai's got to have like an anti-hangover potion. Like,
Mm-hmm.
here, this cocktail's 20% sugar. Take this, take this potion with it, so you'll be able to function tomorrow. All right. Well, we have a lot of references and trivia. Jess, will you tell us what we have in references and trivia?
Hold on. I gotta get a drink first. I gotta stretch in preparation. Okay, I've got to be centered. All right.
You got this.
Johnny Quest, Legos, Cubism, Satanic Panic, 7-Eleven, Rubik's Cube, Art Deco, Disco, Dubstep, Vegas Strip, Blade Runner, Fantasy Football, Colloidal Silver, Conspiracy Theorist, Disneyland, Icy Hot, Hamlet, Beanie Babies, Friday the 13th, YMCA, Loch Ness Monster, Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Frankenstein, Gossip Girl, IKEA, Anal Probe, Star Wars, H.P. Lovecraft, Scooby-Doo, Tucker Carlson, Romeo and Juliet, Law and Order, Serial Killers, Xena the Warrior Princess, Juan Grease, Vitruvian Man, Thundercats, Holy Roman Empire, World War II, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, History of China, Soviet soccer goalies.
Nice. Nicely done. Applause sound effect, applause sound effect.
One day I'm going to pass out. Like, if he gets any more Pratchett'ian, then I'm going to need to start doing some breath training and like vocal work.
I thought you already were. You got much better at it.
But there was a ton. There were also in this section a couple of things that surprised me when I saw the print version compared to listening to the audiobook. First of all, Chistera is spelled with an X, Xistera. So the highlight thing that he gets to throw, that's spelled Xistera, Chistera, which I didn't guess. And there was also a time that he used capital letters for emphasis. And this is right before Carl attacked the guards. He said, I was very aware that what I did next would be considered a very stupid thing, and very stupid thing are in caps. And I guess, yes, right before he attacks the guards, that would be a very stupid thing. So I thought that was interesting.
I use that same thing, that same naming convention.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not something that I've noticed a lot of. So that's why I thought it was worth mentioning, because it's not something that Matt Dinniman does frequently. He doesn't, he uses capitals very sparingly. This is the first time I've seen them used in this way. So I wonder if that's something that we're going to see more of, or just this just really was meant to stand out. And so far, that's what I think. Is this moment was really all of the dumbass things Carl does, and in this book, he's got several. This is the one that that the author really wanted us to see and appreciate. So yes, because he set off their aggro, which means now they're wanted. He's wanted. They can't walk around in daylight. Essentially, is what this means.
You never attack the guards,
and they're not supposed to walk around at night. So they're really fucked. So yes, it was a very stupid thing, indeed. All right, lots of good trivia for us. So they mention in the Desperado Club, one of the hallways or one of the doors was marked Guild-O-Rama. And I wondered about the orama suffix, and it means a spectacular display or instance of, and it originates from the word panorama. Panorama comes from the Greek words pan, meaning all, and horama, meaning view. Essentially, it means a wide view. The suffix became popular in the 1920s and is often used to describe extravagant or notable events. It can be attached to almost any noun to create words like smellorama or laugh-o-rama or liquoramas, which are bottle stores. And that is all thanks to Wikipedia. But we have an orama somewhere that we drive by, so it's not as common, but it's still something that is in use.
Weird crossover. Futurama is the only reason why I know what a Chistera looks like. I guess there's also Archer, but there's one specific episode where they're just sitting and watching something, and several of them have a Chistera full of popcorn that they're just eating the popcorn out of. It's one of those things where there was a scene before this explaining it, I'm sure. Apparently, if you look on YouTube, there's lots and lots of cut scenes from Futurama, and they're all amazing. We went to a panel at Comic-Con not long ago, or probably long ago, where the guy just played cut scenes from Futurama and explained them. It was a fantastic panel. He was very confused at how much we liked it.
Our panel, or our Comic-Con no longer hosts panels, so it was a very long time ago, unfortunately. I wonder if Futurama is named using this convention. because it's
Yes.
not an O-rama, but Futurama. So a double tie back. Interesting. All right. One of the other doors in the Desperado Club is the Silk Road, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. And the Silk Road was a network of Asian trade routes active from the 2nd century BCE until the mid 15th century. And it played a central role in facilitating economic, cultural, political, and religious interactions between the Eastern and Western worlds. Again, thanks to Wikipedia. So, huge trade network.
Also, briefly, an online place to buy drugs.
Yes. That's like one of the first naughty web things I became aware of. I think I became of the Silk Road before I became aware of like internet porn. That was very, very talked about in the wherever the place and time that I happened to be. So, and it wouldn't surprise me. Of course, it seems like at the they have these pharmacists that will come to your table at the Desperado Club peddling drugs. So I imagine there's some illicit substances that are being traded on the Silk Road in, but I don't know exactly what they would be. Maybe, arms or maybe potions or just illegal bits of things from the outside world, perhaps, or from Earth that are coming into the dungeon that shouldn't be there. So
Wait, so
hopefully,
if Ricky Joe can get into the Desperado Club and the Silk Road place, he can get a new arm?
oh, maybe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love when I try to make a bad pun and you just shut it down completely by refusing to acknowledge that it just happened.
Well, I was
It's
just
good pod.
thinking
It's good pod.
the the problem wouldn't be. Well, I didn't know that you were making a pun. That one I just didn't get.
Oh, fair. Ricky Joe, he gets his arm cut off, bitten
Right.
off by Mongo. That's why I said he's disarmingly cute.
Ah, I missed that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, I was thinking, well, he wouldn't have to go in and buy an arm. He could get it. There was a whole monster, a whole mob just made of body parts in this. So he could just, this seems like a place where you could just encounter body parts and it not be a thing that would even register on your weirdo meter, you know? The question is, could you get somebody to attach it? Because I haven't heard anything about dungeon surgeons. We know there are no more dentists left in the crawl, only dental hygienists. So we haven't heard anything about would you need a plastic surgeon and like a vascular surgeon to attach an arm?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think just he has his old arm. It just didn't like magically
Mm,
get reattached. So I'm thinking like a robot one or like a specific person who does reattachments of some kind. Um,
yeah. Yeah, I imagine there'd be like a bionic arm that maybe he could get,
yeah, I could
which
go for a robot arm.
which Mongo would probably also eat. So,
Mhm.
maybe he shouldn't be so much of a brat. We also, speaking of pharmacists, on the 3rd floor, they are talking with Quint in the Desperado Club, and he's the one who sells Mordecai the big starter kit full of drugs for Mordecai to do his concoctions. And they have the conversation. I don't see any Bryn root, Mordecai said. Yeah, it's hard to come by, said Quint. I gave you 2 vials of Bujold sap instead. It's more stable anyway. And thanks to,
Oh,
yeah, and this is from user Varthalon in the subreddit, the Dungeon Crawler Carl subreddit, who let us know that David Brin and Lewis Bujold McMasters are very popular authors, which I never, ever, ever would have gotten. So thank you to user Varthalon in the Dungeon Crawler Carl subreddit, and great catch on that bit.
huh.
Would you have
Yeah,
got
that's one of
that?
those things where like as soon as the names get mentioned, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I kind of know who that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's like one of those just little throwaway moments that is, this great reference that most people are never going to get. All that work going into things that is just going to go over the heads of most of your readers is amazing to me. Then we've got the Vorpal muskrat reference. So pustule in her weird ranting says that her friend bit the
Her
head off
mother.
of her mother bit the head off of Vorpal Muskrat but died. And there's a reason for that. Vorpal is a nonsense word created by Lewis Carroll in the poem Jabberwocky. It originally didn't have a meaning, but it has since come to mean being sharp, deadly, or capable of decapitation. Now, that's largely due to its use in the poem, describing the sword used to kill the Jabberwock. In the poem, the Vorpal blade is described as cutting through and through, and snicker snack, which is where snicker snack comes from, which we don't see here, but we do see in other series, particularly in the Dresden Files. He says whenever he, does anything, he says snicker snack, and I've seen that reference in multiple other books, and wondered where that comes from. And is when they've got a sword, snicker snack, and this is where it comes from. It comes from Jabberwocky. It implies a
Huh.
sharp and lethal strike. And now Collins Dictionary defines Vorpal as resulting or capable of causing death. And in Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of emphasis on the role of decapitation because it's often used to describe magical swords with that particular ability. So this nonsense word by Lewis Carroll has taken on a whole new meaning, and we really see its effects in our literature. And that all of that information is again thanks to Wikipedia. So I thought that was interesting because I've seen Snicker Snack, and that's always stood out to me as such a weird thing. But that's
Mm-hmm.
where it comes from. We
Huh.
also have the Krassu, and they are again part of our big bad mystery. They are the floating decapitated heads that aren't just heads. Somehow decapitated heads are creepy, but decapitated heads with like sinew and arteries and that is just so much more horrifying than just
Mm-hmm.
decapitated heads flying around. And the Krassu is a nocturnal female spirit of Southeast Asian folklore. It manifests as the floating, disembodied head of a woman, usually young and beautiful, with her internal organs still attached and trailing down from the neck. So that is a thing. Yuck. It is a yucky thing, for sure.
Even the AI is like, who comes up with this? That is
Yeah,
so fucked up.
it
It's like,
is
okay, that's how you know
so
it's just
fucked up.
beyond.
So fucked up. And then last thing I found was we talk about Ripper Wonton, and his race is Satonics. And if you look up Satonics, Satonics refers both to a supercomputer used for really deep research, which I thought was very fitting to him and in his role, but also to a genus of marsupials, specifically the quokka. And
Oh,
that makes sense because in the book, they say they typically refer to the Satonics race as quokkas. And that is why. And as we know, quokka is a native Australian marsupial and one of the cutest things ever to exist. So, yeah,
because it's got the permanent little smile.
yeah. So, lots of good trivia and lots of good references this week. And as always, you can let us know what I missed. And you're about to let me know something that I missed right now, I believe.
I'm not 1,000% certain that this is a reference, but I think it is, or at least this is the thing that jumped to my mind. Um, Season 8, Episode 18 of The Simpsons, Homer versus the 18th Amendment. Springfield goes dry, and they enact alcohol prohibition. So Homer becomes a bootlegger, and the town brings in Rex Banner to hunt down the bootleggers who are still somehow bringing booze into the town. And so in one scene, Rex Banner is standing on a balcony overlooking the city, and he mutters, "I'll find you, beer baron." And then you hear Homer off screen yelling, "No, you won't."
You're out there somewhere, Beer Baron, and I'll find you.
No, you won't.
Yes, I will.
Won't.
To which Banner replies, "Yes, I will." And then there's one last, "Won't." And then it cuts to commercial. So the the part where Carl and Donut are laying in bed and they're like, "We're gonna find whoever did this," and then you get the response, "No, you won't." but written on a dead prostitute? Like,
Ugh.
I really feel like that was a reference.
That's just got to
Like
be
it just
so
had to be.
unsettling. Like to be curled up in bed. I mean, granted, you are curled up in bed talking about dead prostitutes, so it's not like super comfortable, but still you're resting, and then just you hear wham from the a body hitting above you, which is,
Yeah. Safe rooms are supposed to be safe, right?
I mean, I guess the prostitute didn't land on them, so they were
I guess
safer than not
you're
being
not
in the
safe
safe room.
from you're not safe from the horrors, I guess.
Just safe from getting
Ugh.
physically crushed, which I mean, considering the book opened with somebody not being safe from physically getting crushed, so I guess you can't take anything for granted in the dungeon. So safe, even with a qualification, is still better than nothing.
And that reference is, of course, from 1997, which is very nearly 30 years ago, and I'm going to cry.
Shut up. All right. So we've been alluding to some of the grossness that has happened in this section. And frankly, there was a lot to choose from in to come up with what we want to talk about. So what do we finally land on for gratuitous violence?
Well, we had the swimming pools full of exploded undead monsters who had been built from spare parts, possibly including Mrs. Parsons' body, but not her head. Um, but I figured we would just go with chapter 22 when they're entering into Miss Quill's abattoir, I guess. We'd stepped into a serial killer's wet dream. The entire room was filled with naked female corpses hanging upside down from the ceiling as if we'd just walked into a meat locker. It goes on to explain that a lot of them are missing their heads. Some of them have their heads with, you know, bits hanging out. The ones that appeared on my map were missing their heads. The others had all of their parts, but the heads were detached, hanging 6 inches below the next, with only the white of bone and straw-like arteries keeping them attached. The horrors didn't stop there. Oh, yay, more horrors. Hanging upside down in a massive dream catcher made of bone was the naked, emaciated corpse of Magistrate Featherfall. His featherless wings were spread, with nothing but goosebumped gray skin left, like a pair of uncooked chicken wings with grasping fingers at the first knuckle. His milky white dead eyes stared out at us under a cracked beak. A clear fluid dripped from both his mouth and eyes. The whole sight was reminiscent of a fucked up inverted parody of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. So this is just full on fucking serial killer movie, horror movie trope. Like, as soon as they walk into it, all of the horrible monsters animate. This is a boss fight area,
This
and
is
you should
like
probably leave.
this is like the season finale of Criminal Minds kind of stuff. The other thing that I thought of is, did you ever see the sequel to Wizard of Oz called Return to Oz?
No.
It's fucking horrifying. It is the worst, scariest movie I have ever seen. And
Oh.
part of the one scene that traumatized me was Dorothy walking in to the queen's room, and there's just two walls full of heads because the queen, instead of changing her hair or whatever, she just changes her fucking head, and they all wake up and start screaming. And this still to this day gives me nightmares. I still won't watch it, as well into my mid to late 40s. No thank you. And so this reminded me of that. Ugh, terrifying, fucking terrifying. And that's without the nudity or the sinew. And again, mentioning of the liquids, this was a very goo heavy section of the book. We talked a lot about things that are exuded from dead bodies. Ugh, yuck.
Very goo heavy, yeah. Yeah, it again got to the point where my brain just stopped registering it, of like, yep, we're in a really gooey place. There's lots of body parts and it's horrible and necromantic and whatever. Anyways,
Well, and one of my things that was in the running for my favorite quote is when they talk about Mongo going in and he said he tilts his head to eat the head like he was eating a taco.
yeah,
Which is why the gross doesn't register, is because it's interspersed with humor. So as heavy as these books can get, there's these light moments that just really kind of distract you from some of the terrible elements. Just eating heads off.
yeah.
Like the dog getting a fly out of the air. Just
I mean, that's what we thought he was doing when he bit Donut on the nose, as he was turning sideways there.
Mhm.
Um,
So he was just practicing. He was training.
exactly.
They just didn't know he was training. And so this is another scene when we talk about criticism of Matt Dinniman's work, which I think we need to do, especially because in his bio, he specifically says that he enjoys reading negative reviews of his work. But one of the criticisms, again, is that these books are misogynistic. We are on record as saying we disagree. But the fact that there are these naked women hanging, so it's women that have been victimized, it's sex workers that have been victimized, and that is seen as being misogynistic or being anti-female. I think we know again that this is a reference. This is a what did we decide? It was a mythology reference. I said it 2 minutes ago. I'd have to go back and read it. But we know the Krasu are a reference. So this is not something that just came out of his head. But there's also a dead male in this whole tableau. Kind of this, I kind of pictured as the centerpiece in this big dream catcher type of thing. And they are naked, but that isn't really, it's mentioned, but it isn't dwelled on. Like, it's not like we don't hear pages of their boobs,
Yeah.
I could easily picture other authors saying, their breasts were hanging, and I mean, we would get that. We would hear about nipples, we would hear about bear vaginas and elf vaginas and orc vagina. Like, there could be so much more terrible sexist descriptors used. I don't think it is the object here. I think the nudity and the fact that they are sex workers, it does feed into the story. It goes to the story. I don't think in this instance, I mean, we call it gratuitous violence, not gratuitous violence. I don't think here those descriptions were gratuitous, and I don't think they were sexist. I think they were horrifying, but I don't find them sexist. What about you?
I agree. Matt Dinniman is really good at not breasting boobily. Like, it's just not a thing that happens in his books, that it's like, let's spend, an entire paragraph talking about her breasts. It's like, she looks like this, and she's got breasts that are about this big, and she's got tattoos and is wearing a red thong. Like,
but we
that's
didn't
just
even hear
a
about
quick
Katya's
description
breasts.
of. Yeah, no, we don't know. We when they go back into the production trailer, Carl calls her stunning and mentions that her hair color changed.
Yep.
That's
So we
just a
don't hear.
description, guys. That's just describing, and you have to do that. It's a book.
I mean, just the opportunity to think about, if you're a cubist painting, the opportunity to describe those boobs in horrifying and yet remarkable ways really was there. That was on the table if he wanted to, and we didn't get any of that. So I really appreciated that. I also really appreciated that we didn't hear right off the bat if Carl was sexually attracted to Katya in human form. And I'm just so used to that being part of any introduction of any female character in
Hmm.
books that I read and books that I like. So when it isn't there, it really stands out to me. And I think
Hmm.
that's great. We know nothing about the bangability of Katya. And I'm so happy about that. We don't know if Hecla is fuckable in her, Amazonian warrior
We know she's
mode.
muscly.
Yeah,
That's what we
exactly.
hear. She's stoic and muscly. So it's like, oh, okay, so she's a really big Nordic woman, like with
Mm-hmm.
muscles. That makes sense. I'm gonna guess she's blonde. I'm guessing she has pale skin. None of this really has anything to do with anything. Sorry.
I'm assuming she would be a decent but very scary lay. Um,
Hmm.
this is not information that we are given. And so, aside from the fact that I don't think the nudity here is gratuitous, when you combine it with the fact that we don't get these mentions that would be very common, so common that they wouldn't even be noticed had they been there. They're just part and parcel with introducing female characters in other books. I think it really points out that no, when it is in here, it is part of the story and it isn't something that is not considered. It is something that is thought through. So yeah. So I didn't like reading this passage. It was horrifying, but again, you know, not not misogynistic in my opinion.
The fact that they're women and the fact that they're sex workers is part of the plot. And it's part of not just the book's plot, but the plot by Miss Quill to kill a whole bunch of people and use these women for it. Um, that I don't think it has anything to do with anything misogynistic. Like it's it's this constant contention thing with like the Dresden Files series that Harry Dresden is a misogynist. He's kind of sexist, but that's just part of his character and it's part of the trope of that kind of detective story. She had legs for days and she walked in and was trouble and like that kind of hard-boiled stuff. And this is just like, of course, they lured sex workers to go somewhere else so that they wouldn't be missed. And then you can just take these people and use them as disposable people, which is a thing that happens to vulnerable and marginalized populations like sex workers or queer people or
Black trans
just
women.
pile black trans women are vanishingly rare you know so no, it's not misogynistic, it's just realistic characterization of a plot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess we're already kind of into talking points, so let's jump officially into our talking points. We get we get the Earth hobby potions. We finally get some payoff.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of had no idea what it was. It was Cesta Punta and Scuttlifoli. We don't have any idea what those are, and we didn't want to bring them up until now because we were going to have to, define them. So Cesta Punta is actually Hyli, and Scuttlifoli is the knowledge and enjoyment of patches. So Donut remarks on several of the patches on the pseudo military uniform thing. And then we get Katya as just like, oh, I had gearhead. I know about engines now. Like, well, that's much clearer. So I don't think we learn officially what Scuttlefily is just yet. But if we're going to bring it up, we're going to have to look up what
No,
the
but she
word means and
she
tells you.
uses it. I mean, she uses it, and she says specifically, "I don't know how I know that. Like, I must have watched a TV show, so it
Hmm.
doesn't
Hmm.
click with
Hmm.
her yet that that's what it is." But we know that's what it is.
Hmm. Um, oh, we got the dick joke pub. We got the one-eyed narwhal. See, here there is a bit of creepiness and misogyny because the guy who runs a fucking pub called the One Eye Narwhal that has a picture of himself unzipping the pants as the sign. Like, okay, this dude's a creep. And then Donut gets the picture of B and is like, oh, creepy dude, come look at this picture of my mom. She's really hot. And then he's standing there, like, stroking it gently when they call him to do something else. And he's like, what? Oh, yes, no, fine. And even then, we don't know how big Beatrice's breasts are. We just get it mentioned that they're there. So it's just this dude being a creep because this dude's a creep.
So it was mentioned in context of the guy being a creep. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah,
We did not need to get to
yuck.
a creepy description. We just saw the creepy dude doing a creepy thing.
I do think it's funny that he sort of like, it's like the pictures on a dating site. They specifically mention that when they walked in, it was the guy from the sign, but he's like twice as big. So
Yep, 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 yep.
he's a catfish. He's a sign catfisher.
Um, all right, we got a bit of more explanation about the safety of members of the dungeon. So like uh Mordecai's protection in the past versus his protection now. Um, as a game guide, they just can't he can't be attacked really. But he also can't really leave his room, and the safe room, it prevents you from getting attacked and prevents any damage happening. But now as a manager, he has a more dynamic role and he has a more dynamic kind of protection where he can get hurt and he can get killed in the context of the game, but that does not mean that he is actually killed. It just kind of pulls him out of the dungeon. Um, and it made me think of the idea of like the Soul Saver from Ian M. Banks's Culture novels, which is like super future. But like it's just this little implant or a necklace or an earring or whatever. It's this little piece of tech that's recording your memories in real time. So then if you die, you can just take those memories and upload them into a freshly cloned body of yourself. And it's like you didn't actually die. You just kind of you got transporter problems. You got rebuilt after the last one you died.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of different manifestations of birth and death in these books because again we think here in terms of Mordecai, so he was a former crawler, he was a manager, and then there's certain rules about where he can go and how safe he is. We think of the people who the administrators who when they come into the dungeon they are very vulnerable, and then we've got these other crawlers who go into the dungeon, and even though they retain the memories of themselves, they're essentially reborn as different individuals. We've got
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
pharmacist, we've got Remax. Heck, even Mordecai is essentially reborn on every floor because he comes
mm-hmm.
in a different form, and so that previous form has kind of died for him. But it isn't, none of it is clean because sometimes people are coming in with knowledge of former lifetimes, sometimes they're being born as fully fleshed out human beings with a lifetime of memories. These the elves that had dwarves that had 8 kids and whatnot, which is really interesting. So how people
Oh,
exit and enter is very very different compared to what we would normally think of like a birth and a death. And safety is something that is relative. Again, we talked about the safe room, and we thought of the safe room, we think we know what safe is, but even in the safe room, we know that that can be compromised because at least with in game, at least with the magic, people can listen in to what you say in the safe room. So it isn't sacred. It isn't a place where you are truly safe because there are ways for that to be compromised. So it's really interesting to think about these things, I think, all together because some of these things that we take for granted, we know what a life starts, that's when your brain and your memories start. We know when you die, it's when your body dies and your soul or your brain ceases to be. We know what safe is. That's when you're protected and nothing bad is going to happen, and none of those things are necessarily true in the dungeon. We even know things like the map is not necessarily accurate. The information that they get from, in terms of people who are offering them quests or what mobs appear, that might not necessarily be accurate. Information they get from the AI might not necessarily be accurate. So, all of these anchors that are so ingrained in you as a person, all of that is off the table. Now, all of that is needs to be taken with a grain of salt, is relative or has special rules around it or exceptions. And it just, in addition to having to fight and having to face the head-on danger, just the fact that all of the things that your soul knows, none of those things are true anymore. And that has got to just rip you off your moorings in such a significant way. And now we're finding more and more of these little exceptions and special situations. And as we go, as we're out of the training levels and into the real dungeon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole thing has you got to be on your back foot from jump because this is crazy and weird, and you might get eaten by a plant. Like,
How do
no,
you do this without a manager?
I don't know. I mean, just yeah, no. I have several things to add, but those are all from future books, and I don't want to spoil anything.
No
Um,
spoiling.
so I'm gonna say, yeah, that's fucked up. And let's move to the next one, which was, um, you caught this, I didn't. When they're talking to Miss Quill, and she says, "What's wrong?" and Donut says, "Murder, murder most foul," like from Hamlet, but also foul, as in sky foul. Like, ugh, God damn it, Matt.
Yeah.
And
We
then,
all, oh, go ahead.
well, no, and then we just have the thing about there were several setups to kill Miss Quill and thus cause Remax to explode because the spell was interrupted. Um, I'm kind of thinking of those as goblin baby scenarios where there's no way you're getting through this with your honor intact, basically, like, right? Like I'm going back to Javik again in Mass Effect 3. You think you're gonna get through this with your honor intact? Ask stand among the ashes of a trillion dead souls and ask the ghosts if honor matters. The silence is your answer. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to do some stuff we don't want to do to get through this. And part of that might include blowing up a city. Not because you
Mm,
wanted to, but because the game pretty much forced you into that path. And it had multiple ways of forcing you.
it was going to happen one way or the other. And somebody was going to be the bad guy in that scenario. Somebody was going to get fucked and be the trigger. And then, boy, in the AI specifically calling them out to everybody else. So, like, you want to know whose fault this is?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus. So it could have been anybody, but that was going to happen. That was just a means to an end. So, as much as I think Carl and Donut probably feel responsible, that was going to happen. That was going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
happen. But it's hard for that. Again, it's hard for us to think of that. You're going to take these things personally, I think is the natural reaction. So I think that makes sense. But they had the option to kind of, I think, play into it as one would expect, which is, when they say, hey, you've got however many minutes to run to the safe room, and, here's a way to be safe, and everybody scrambles to get to safety. And, they make the conscious choice that no, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to save everybody. We're going to try to save Katya. We're thinking about these NPCs. And that's, I think, where the naturalness of what was going to happen stops, or what the game predicted would happen, where that ends,
Mm-hmm.
which is why
And
they
we get
weren't
that
prepared for all the stuff that happens.
and we get that right after Mordecai giving his "you can't save them all" speech of like, you can't save them all. You can't. It's not within your capacity, and you're just gonna get yourself killed. And so now we're writing this line of like, do the most good we can while also surviving and sometimes having to blow up a bunch of goblin babies, which is this really good back and forth tension that we're going to have to deal with moving forward.
And it was one thing when the goblin babies and were like pre-mobs. It's another thing when they are potentially former crawlers, real lives, real human lives out there that are in this weird situation of it's kind of a death while they're in the dungeon because they don't exist out in society, and so you could be killing those people and then killing crawlers. And so yeah, it's there's a lot of morality decisions they need to make kind of instantaneously.
Mm-hmm. And just such a topsy-turvy kind of. All right, we get it. We get it. It's complicated. It's moral. Don't kill people, but sometimes you got to kill people. Moving on. I think the last thing we had in our talking points was there is different content in the different versions of this book you can get, which we discovered somewhat recently. And so apparently now you're checking all of the versions to see what our differences are. Yeah,
I
you want to tell
am.
us about those?
I've got the hardbacks, I've got the Kindle, I've got the audiobook. I haven't yet listened to the live readings from Sound Booth Theater, but that would be next. But the ebook has a blurb specifically where Matt asks for Amazon reviews because this was very early in their publishing. And he says that there is a don't tell Amazon and don't tell my wife offer to leave an
Mhm.
Amazon review, which is that he will sire children for people who write Amazon reviews. The Kindle book has a, or no, I'm sorry, the audiobook has a commercial for Sound Booth Theater that
Mhm.
features a company creating a Princess Donut toy. So it's sort of said in character of the crawl. And then the hardback, instead of either of those things, has the continuation of bonus material that started in the first hardback. So you're getting a bit of a different experience depending upon which version you are reading or listening to. It's all interesting. It's just different.
Trying to bribe people for good reviews of a product online is now illegal. Uh, so, I mean, pretending that there's any kind of capability for the United States to prosecute actual criminals, we'll ignore that for right now. But I wonder if that gets grandfathered in, or is there like a joke clause of like, I'm not actually going to sire children with people if they leave me a good review.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that would fall under puffery, would be my, as far as legal terminology. I think, you could probably claim that that is exaggeration and that no one, a reasonable man, would not take that to be true. But
fair,
that's
fair.
it's given a lot of putting a lot of mileage on the word reasonable. So, I don't know.
Yeah. All right, well, our last section is our discussion questions. Discussion questions are so that you, our dear listeners, can discuss and crawl along with us. Email us your answer or leave a YouTube comment, and our favorite answers will be read on air during the next episode. Last week question, if you were in the dungeon, what race would you choose? Our top two answers were Val said mimic. It's introvert friendly. People will leave you alone if they think you're furniture.
I like that.
Uh, oh, and very appropriate for today's date, Sierra said, is the luggage from Discworld an option? No, that is horrendously OP and broken. Um, and the first, you know, 8% of any Rincewind book is about getting the luggage far away from him so it doesn't just end the plot by stomping on it. Good question, though. Good try. So this week's question: would you have run to a safe room or tried to save NPCs and crawlers even though it might kill you, and why? Jess, what was your
Well,
answer?
so first of all, I like to think that I would try to save everyone because I'm a good person. But honestly, a large part of that would only be because I'm not athletic. And even with the dungeon boots, I still probably wouldn't have been able to make it the run to the safe room in time. So I would just be trying to save everybody by default. How about
Fair.
you?
I gotta call it goblin babies again. The dungeon forces you to make mortally shitty choices that you wouldn't normally choose because either that or you die. So I would probably be trying to get the fuck out of town with everyone because otherwise I'm just too dead to help anyone. You know, dead soldier can't protect anyone kind of thing. Um, yeah, it sucks
Which,
that NPC is gonna die, but if I try, I will also die. Um,
arguably, that is the reasonable and smart thing to do.
yeah. Well, that'll finish up this episode, so we're gonna move on to our wrap up. So, our next episode will be Dungeon Crawler Carl Book 3, The Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook, Chapters 1 through 13. So, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and subscribe on the YouTubes, rate us on Spotify, and please email us your comments, questions, corrections, or just say nice things to us at newachievementpod@gmail.com. And until next time, be sure to get out there and kill, kill, kill. I feel like that one was a little bit more gravelly because I've been talking for a while. I should go run the humidifier.
Yeah, it's still fucking creepy.